The year is 1982. Deep beneath the frozen tundra of the Kola Peninsula, Soviet air defense officers sit before radar screens that have tracked American aircraft for decades. Their equipment, sprawling across 11 time zones from the Baltic to the Pacific, represents the most extensive air defense network ever constructed. These men are the elite of the PVO, the Soviet Air Defense Forces, trained to protect the motherland from any threat. They believe their system is impenetrable. What you're watching isn't speculation. It's pulled from real files, real operations, and real consequences. If you want more of these untold Cold War stories, subscribe to Cold War Black Files. On this particular morning, that belief is about to be destroyed. A blip appears on the radar screen. The officer leans forward. The aircraft is approaching Soviet airspace at an altitude reading that seems impossible. 70,000 feet, perhaps higher. The speed indicator climbs rapidly. Mach 2.8. Mach 3. The numbers continue rising. The officer reaches for the red telephone connecting him directly to Moscow. Within minutes, scramble orders echo across multiple airbases. MiG-25 interceptors, the fastest fighters in the Soviet arsenal, thunder down runways. Their mission is simple: intercept and identify the intruder. The MiG-25 pilots push their aircraft to maximum performance. These machines were built for exactly this purpose, designed specifically to counter high-altitude American reconnaissance aircraft. The pilots have trained for years for this moment. They climb hard, their powerful engines consuming fuel at an astonishing rate. At 60,000 feet, they level off, searching the sky above them. The target appears on their radar, still higher, still faster. They push their throttles forward, but the aircraft above them is already gone, racing across Soviet territory at speeds exceeding 3 times the speed of sound. The State Route 71 Blackbird has just demonstrated something the Soviet leadership never wanted to admit: their air defenses cannot stop it. More troubling, they cannot even get close. This reality represents more than a tactical problem. For the Soviet Union, air defense is not merely military capability but a cornerstone of national identity. Since the end of World War II, massive resources have poured into creating an air defense shield that supposedly makes Soviet airspace inviolable. Thousands of surface-to-air missile sites, the landscape. Hundreds of interceptor aircraft stand ready at bases across the country. Radar installations cover every approach. The system cost billions of rubles and represents decades of scientific effort. It is supposed to be perfect. The State Route 71 makes it irrelevant. In the underground command bunker in Moscow, senior officers gather around plotting tables. The aircraft's track appears as a line slicing through Soviet airspace. The realization settling over these men is profound and disturbing. Every missile fired falls short. Every interceptor arrives too late. The technical challenges are enormous. No existing materials can withstand the heat generated by sustained Mach 3 flight. The aircraft's skin will reach temperatures exceeding 600 degrees Fahrenheit. Conventional aluminum would melt. Johnson's team develops the aircraft primarily from titanium, a material so difficult to work with that entirely new manufacturing techniques must be invented. Ironically, much of the titanium is purchased through shell companies from the Soviet Union itself, which possesses the world's largest titanium reserves. The aircraft that emerges from this effort looks like something from science fiction. Long and sleek, painted black to dissipate heat, the State Route 71 represents the pinnacle of early 1960s aerospace technology. Its twin engines are marvels of engineering, designed to function as both turbojets at lower speeds and ramjets at higher velocities. At maximum speed, the aircraft leaks fuel because the tanks are designed to seal only when heated by air friction. The pilots wear pressure suits identical to those worn by astronauts. Every aspect of the design pushes the boundaries of what is technologically possible. The Soviet leadership first learns of the Blackbird's existence through intelligence reports in the mid-1960s. The initial response is dismissal. No aircraft can sustain Mach 3 flight, their experts insist. The Americans are exaggerating, engaging in propaganda. But as more information arrives, the dismissals turn to concern. The Americans actually built it. The aircraft is operational. And it is going to fly over Soviet territory. The response is predictable. The Soviet military-industrial complex mobilizes. If the Americans can build such an aircraft, the Soviets will build an interceptor to shoot it down. The MiG Design Bureau receives the assignment. Their solution is the MiG-25, an interceptor designed around pure speed and altitude performance. Like the State Route 71, it uses innovative construction techniques and pushes technological boundaries. The resulting aircraft can reach Mach 2.8 and operate above 70,000 feet. On paper, it appears capable of intercepting the Blackbird. But paper performance and operational reality prove very different. The MiG-25's high-speed capability comes with severe limitations. The aircraft burns fuel at such a rate that its time at maximum performance is measured in minutes. The engines, if pushed beyond design limits, can destroy themselves. The weapon systems, designed for high-altitude interception, require the target to cooperate by flying predictable paths at constant speeds. Most critically, the MiG-25 requires extensive ground control and vectoring to position it for an intercept. Against an aircraft as fast as the State Route 71, this means the interceptor must be airborne and in perfect position before the Blackbird arrives. Once the State Route 71 passes, pursuit is impossible. The speed differential is simply too small. Soviet pilots quickly discover these limitations. During training exercises designed to simulate State Route 71 intercepts, success requires knowing exactly when and where the target will appear. Even then, the intercept window is measured in seconds. Any deviation from the planned flight path, any defensive maneuver by the target, and the opportunity vanishes. In actual operations against the State Route 71, these perfect conditions never exist. The Blackbird's flight paths are unpredictable. Its speed varies. Its electronic countermeasures confuse tracking systems. Time and again, MiG-25 scramble, climb desperately, and watch helplessly as the American aircraft remains beyond reach. The surface-to-air missile systems fare no better. The S-75 Dvina, known to NATO as the SA-2 guideline, is the backbone of Soviet air defense. These missiles have shot down American aircraft before. In 1960, an SA-2 brought down Gary Power's U-2 spy plane, a tremendous propaganda victory for the Soviet Union. But the SA-2 was designed to engage aircraft flying at 50 to 60,000 feet at subsonic speeds. Against the State Route 71, flying 20,000 feet higher at 3 times the speed of sound, the missiles cannot reach their target. The missile's maximum altitude is insufficient. Even if it could reach that height, the SR-71 speed means it exits the missile's engagement envelope before the weapon can arrive. More advanced systems are developed. The S-200, NATO designation SA-5 Gammon, offers improved performance. Newer missiles, better radar, enhanced guidance systems. None of it matters. The fundamental problem remains. The State Route 71 flies higher and faster than Soviet technology can counter. Every system has a ceiling, a maximum speed, an engagement envelope. The Blackbird operates outside all of them. For Soviet air defense personnel, this situation is psychologically devastating. These are professionals who have dedicated their lives to defending their nation's airspace. They have trained exhaustively. Their equipment represents the best their country can produce. And yet, when an American reconnaissance aircraft violates Soviet airspace, they are powerless. They watch it on radar, track its progress, calculate intercept solutions that never work, and eventually watch it disappear into international airspace, having photographed whatever it chose. The political implications are equally severe. The Soviet system operates on the premise of technological parity with, or superiority to, the West. The Communist Party's legitimacy rests partly on demonstrating that Soviet science and industry can match capitalist achievement. Air defense is a particular point of pride because it is defensive, protective, aligned with the Soviet Union's proclaimed peaceful intentions. The existence of an American aircraft that renders this defense meaningless undermines fundamental assumptions about Soviet technological capability. In the Kremlin, senior leadership confronts an uncomfortable truth. The Americans possess a strategic reconnaissance capability that Soviet technology cannot counter. Every sensitive military installation, every strategic weapons facility, every naval base can be photographed at will. The Americans know where Soviet forces are deployed, what equipment they possess, what their readiness status is. This intelligence advantage has profound strategic implications. In any crisis, the Americans operate with information superiority. They can plan operations based on detailed knowledge of Soviet dispositions. The Soviet military, meanwhile, lacks equivalent reconnaissance capabilities. Their attempts to develop similar aircraft have failed. The technological gap is real and significant. Some in the Soviet leadership propose radical countermeasures. If the aircraft cannot be shot down in flight, perhaps it can be destroyed on the ground. Special forces operations against State Route 71 bases are considered but deemed too risky. Sabotage operations are discussed but face similar objections. The aircraft operates from secure facilities with extensive security. Any operation would risk escalation and would likely fail. Others suggest accepting the reconnaissance flights and focusing on deception and camouflage. If the Americans are going to photograph military installations anyway, show them what you want them to see. Mobile missile systems can be moved before overflights. Dummy installations can mislead analysts. Activity patterns can be altered to conceal actual capabilities. This approach has merit but represents a fundamental concession. Soviet airspace is not actually sovereign. The Americans can violate it whenever they choose. The most ambitious response is technological. If Soviet industry cannot currently match American high-altitude reconnaissance capability, perhaps with sufficient resources and time, it can. Massive investments flow into aviation research programs. New materials are developed. Engine technologies advance. The Soviet Union's best scientists and engineers receive instructions to close the gap. Progress occurs, but slowly. The Americans continue flying the State Route 71 throughout the 1970s and 80s, maintaining their advantage. For the men actually operating Soviet air defense systems, the psychological impact is corrosive. They perform their duties professionally, but the knowledge that their systems are inadequate against the primary threat they were designed to counter breeds cynicism. When your sophisticated radar network can only watch helplessly as the enemy accomplishes his mission, what is the point? When your interceptors cannot intercept, when your missiles cannot reach their target, when all your training and preparation proves useless, morale suffers. This demoralization extends beyond the immediate personnel to the broader Soviet military establishment. The air defense failure is not isolated. It is symptomatic of deeper problems within the Soviet technological and industrial base. The Soviet system excels at certain types of achievement. It can mobilize massive resources for priority projects. It can produce enormous quantities of standardized equipment. What it struggles with is the kind of sustained innovation and technical excellence required to create something like the State Route 71. The Blackbird is not just one brilliant breakthrough but the culmination of countless smaller innovations across multiple fields: material science, engine design, aerodynamics, manufacturing techniques, avionics, reconnaissance systems. Each component represents the state of the art. The integration of these components into a functioning aircraft requires systems engineering of the highest order. The Soviet system, for all its resources and talent, cannot replicate this achievement. Partly this is a matter of industrial capability. The Soviet manufacturing base, while large, lacks the precision and quality control required for such demanding applications. Partly it is organizational. The Soviet military-industrial complex operates under central planning with all its inefficiencies and rigidities. Innovation is stifled by bureaucracy. Risk-taking is discouraged. The environment that produced the Skunk Works, with its small teams, rapid decision-making and tolerance for unconventional approaches, cannot exist within Soviet structures. There is also a human dimension. The State Route 71 program benefits from the voluntary participation of America's best aerospace engineers, drawn by professional challenge and competitive compensation. The Soviet equivalent relies on personnel assigned by the state, working under conditions of strict secrecy and political oversight. The contrast in organizational culture produces different outcomes. As the years pass, the State Route 71 continues its missions. Each successful overflight reinforces Soviet awareness of their defensive inadequacy. The flights are not frequent, but they do not need to be. The psychological impact of knowing the flights can occur, that Soviet air defenses cannot prevent them, that the leadership in Moscow is powerless to stop American reconnaissance, is sufficient. The confidence of an entire military establishment erodes, not through dramatic defeat in battle, but through repeated demonstration of technological inferiority. By the 1980s, other factors begin to affect the strategic balance. Satellite reconnaissance provides many of the same capabilities as the State Route 71 without violating airspace. The political risks of manned overflights decrease their frequency. But the damage to Soviet military morale is already done. For 2 decades, the most sophisticated air defense network ever created could not stop one American aircraft. That failure, more than any single battle or confrontation, revealed the limits of Soviet technological achievement and the consequences of those limits for strategic competition with the West. The State Route 71 eventually retires from service. Satellites and other reconnaissance methods prove sufficient. But the aircraft's legacy extends far beyond the intelligence it gathered. It demonstrated that in certain crucial areas of technology, the gap between American and Soviet capability was not merely significant but unbridgeable. The Soviet Union could not, with any amount of effort or resources, create an equivalent aircraft or an effective counter to it. This realization, spreading through the Soviet military and political establishment, contributed to a broader understanding that the technological competition with the West was not going as Soviet propaganda claimed. When the Soviet Union finally collapsed in 1991, many factors contributed to that outcome. Economic stagnation, political rigidity, the costs of empire, the failures of central planning. But among those factors was a loss of confidence in the Soviet system's ability to compete with the West technologically. The State Route 71, flying untouchable above Soviet territory, photographing whatever it chose, immune to the entire elaborate air defense network meant to stop it, became a symbol of that technological gap. For the men who tracked it on their radar screens, who scrambled their interceptors in futile pursuit, who fired missiles that fell short, the message was clear and demoralizing. The impenetrable shield was an illusion. The Americans could penetrate Soviet airspace at will, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them.